Hello and welcome to Bournemouth University and our Future of the Media event in partnership with Newsquest Media Group. It's wonderful to see so many of you here today, and welcome to those of you joining from home. Just a few housekeeping bits. There's no planned fire drill, so if the alarm does sound, please swiftly exit the building. Thank you to Matt Desmier, BU, the course leaders, and these wonderful students hosting us here and putting on this wonderful production, both in the room and for those of you at home. Thank you very much for letting me have my Alex Jones moment. Thank you to our wonderful clients. Their support and commitment to us is always valued. Our pledge to you is to support you in any way possible, and we hope that today demonstrates we're committed to taking you with us on every journey. Very shortly, Toby Granville from Newsquest, his Editorial Development Director, will take to the stage to share with you the tools and technology driving editorial decision-making across newsrooms across the UK. He's joined by two of his esteemed reporters who will join him and these wonderful students on our Q&A panel after his talk. I'll let the journalism students Grace, Abby and Lewis introduce him properly, but I wanted to thank him for joining us today and for giving up his time and indeed for his very grateful support for us. Liz, RMD, can't be here today. She's at a British Chamber of Commerce AGM, flying the flag for Dorset and indeed comms at board level, which is also very exciting, but I know that she is disappointed not to be able to be here today and wanted to express her sincere gratitude to Toby for his collaboration and support that has supported the strength of our agency for nearly 30 years. Finally, it's a real pleasure to have so many of our team in the room with us today. They're committed every single day to remaining at the front of media evolution, and it's the greatest pleasure to work with such a talented group of colleagues. So, Grace, Abby, and Lewis, over to you.
Good afternoon and welcome to Studio 2 at the Bournemouth Media School, where we plan to learn more about how local news works. Grace is with us in the audience.
We're joined by an audience of media professionals, local businesses and journalism students.
Today we will hear from one of the key figures at Newsquest, which is one of the biggest media organisations in the country.
It owns hundreds of media titles from the Herald in Glasgow, the Telegraph and Argus in Bradford and the Echo here in Bournemouth.
Its weekly titles include the Falmouth Packet and Barrow's Worcester Journal, the oldest continuously published newspaper in the world.
But how do editors find out which stories interest their readers and therefore keep enough eyeballs on stories in this rapidly changing media landscape?
Well, our guest can tell us. Good afternoon to Toby Granville, the Editorial Development Director at Newsquest.
Hello, it's great to be here, and thank you for inviting me to this fantastic university. I'm here today to talk to you all about the new age of newsrooms, which I hope you're going to enjoy very much as I go through the next hour or so with my fellow reporters, Hannah Knight, who's the chief reporter at the Bournemouth Daily Echo, and Deb Gahan, who is an AI assistant reporter at the Bournemouth Daily Echo. Right, so first of all, who are we? Newsquest is the UK's leading local media group. We have more than 600 NCTJ professionally trained journalists producing trusted local news across the UK. We've got 54 city or town-based newsrooms based at the heart of the community, which is something that we feel is absolutely crucial to be able to become part of the community and ingrained in what is going on in our areas. Many local newsrooms across the land have closed since COVID and for financial reasons, but we feel that it is absolutely crucial to have that investment and where we are a presence in the local towns across the UK. So we publish 200 titles in print and online, from our largest, like the Herald, which is a national newspaper in Scotland, all the way through to the Northern Echo, the Oxford Mail, the Bournemouth Daily Echo, basically across every town and city in the UK. We're not far away with a local newspaper brand. We have 34 editors, total of 17 male editors and 17 female editors, which is something I'm particularly proud of that for the first time in Newsquest history we have an equal amount of male and female editors. When I started in this role about 10 years ago, we had the same amount of editors roughly, but only around 3 were actually female. So I'm really pleased to have been part of that progress, and all talented and well-deserved roles they are too. So just going back to Newsquest as an organisation, we're owned by Gannett, which is the publisher of USA Today. So we have a large organisation that we're involved in quite regularly, sharing really good knowledge about the industry across the pond, which always is really helpful. But overall, our monthly audience now is always surprises people when I talk to them at industry events and certainly local business events like this one, that our monthly audience now is actually over 60 million users. Okay, that's 60 million people across the UK are engaging in our websites at some point. And out of those 60 million users, they are reading around 200 million of our articles. So we are getting 200 million page views every month from our news and content that is being written by our reporters, which is a phenomenal amount. And in fact, even with the 7 million print readers that we still have every week, we've never had an audience this size. We've got more readers now than we ever have done. So you know, rumours of the demise in local news are very much exaggerated, because we are read online and in print by more than 75% of the local population. And when you put that into perspective, Facebook gets around 50%. So 50% that is actually declining, whereas ours is 75% and growing, which is why it's so important for local businesses to understand the power that we still have as an industry. But it's not all about just online. We also really take seriously newspapers still, and the impact of print with our readers. You can't produce newspapers and be able to give the same sort of impact to a picture like this one without using the power of print, because online it just doesn't have the same effect. It doesn't have the same effect looking at a picture like this on the phone. It hasn't got that wow factor, and whenever editors around the UK produce front pages like this, you know, coming from a page designer like I was as one of my many roles in industry, it always makes my heart flutter and gives me those butterflies again, and you know, because I know that people are going to be going into the newsagents the following day and looking at that paper and just going, wow, look at that, and exactly what they do, and it's a joy to behold. So, and you know, newspapers, you know, got a new lease of life under Newsquest, and it's very much about slowing down the decline of newspapers, because you know, there's some parts of that print industry where those declines are in double digits, whereas our declines very much are in single digit decline, which means that basically we've managed to slow it down so much that most of the only readers we now lose from our print buyers are actually people that have passed on because they're from old age. We generally gain new readers every day digitally, but for our newspaper readers, we still get a lot of interest from the older demographic. Our average reader age is around 70 years old, but nevertheless, if we print the puzzles page wrong or we don't put the answers in on the right day, the phones are off the hook in the newsrooms, much to the annoyance of reporters like here who have to deal with those unfortunate complaints. But joking aside, you can see here, this is some audience data on our newspaper sales, and you can see here that over the past few years we've managed to slow down the decline, and you can see here where the bottom lines are, where that bottom green line on the left, it's quite difficult to see, but you can see that it's around minus 17%, which is where it was at the start of 2023, and as we came into 2024, there was a lot of work done to improve our newspaper products, make them have more local stories in them, make them have better appealing columnists and sections that are more relevant and resonate better to that older reader, as well as obviously that high impact front pages that grab the attention that I was showing you earlier. But you can see from that the improvements that have been made that have actually improved the graph there, and you can actually see on that table there that those sales figures now have gone from being in double digits a couple of years ago into single digits, and the longer we can keep hold of them, the better, I think, for the industry and journalism as a whole. So, but you know, many people watching this today will be digitally focused and probably wouldn't have even bought the newspaper because it's, you know, they've read it they're reading it online. They might be reading it online through our social channels, or they maybe have got the app downloaded, or they may be reading a newsletter. You know, in any shape and form, they can come to our websites through many different ways, and we can get millions of page views. And you can see here that a few years ago, again on this graph, you know, November 2022, we were getting around 160 million page views. It's overall page views. And an article page views would have been around 100 million of that. The last 2 months, in August and September, we've had record amount of page views. So we've had around 200 million article page views to our websites, and it's the first time we've ever hit over 200 million in Newsquest history. And we're still growing by about 10% every year. The figures that you see here out on the graph actually show another 80 million page views that comes from people who may be looking back in news from through archives, looking at older stories, or they may be going to our advertising platforms on there, like the jobs ads or the motors ads. So it's not just purely on the news today, or of that week, or of that month. We get a heck of a lot of page views as well from our audience. Through them basically looking up old stories or recent stories they may have missed. So it's a really important part of the fabric of the local communities, that they've got an archive that's alive that they can go back into and check any stories that they might have missed while they've been away on holiday, or they're working for a new business, or they've moved to a different part of the country and they want to be able to plug into what's happening in those local communities. And finally, the final part of the audience data is digital subscribers. Now for us, we very much see that digital subscribers is our future. We can provide a practically ad-free experience to our readers, and the revenue that we can get from that, while small at the moment, will definitely build to be able to take the place of the newspaper sales decline that we will no doubt see in the coming years. We've currently got around 100,000 digital subscribers paying around £5 a month. And the aim is actually to grow that to around 1 million subscribers in the next 5 years. And we believe that that will form a really strong, engaging paying model for our readers, in which they'll enjoy reading the news. They also get a digital subscription with it, so they can actually see the newspaper digital version of it, which many people like to read, and also puzzles and things like that. And so there's lots of benefits to having digital subscribers as a kind of future of our audience. And I think it's a very exciting part of our industry that shows the quality of our news that we're producing is so good that people are willing to pay for a digital subscription rather than in preference to reading it for free online. So it's kind of kudos to the fact that we are doing such high quality news that people are paying for that experience. So that's the kind of audience data slides out of the way. You'll be pleased to hear. I'll try not to show too many of those for the rest of my talk. And as mentioned at the start of this meeting, on the enduring power of trusted local news, this newspaper here, the Barrows Worcester Journal, first published in 1690, and it's the world's oldest newspaper, and we at Newsquest are lucky enough to own it, and we still publish it every week, and it's still got a very high loyal readership. But it just goes to show that the power and the endurance of local news should never be underestimated, because we've been around in this case since 1690, and I want to make sure that we're around for another 400 or 500 years at least. So, why does trusted local news like ours still matter? Well, firstly, 94% of UK adults have encountered misinformation online, particularly on social media platforms such as Facebook, X, TikTok and Instagram. And we are in a battle now with misinformation and disinformation. It's never been more important to be able to provide trusted local news to our communities. I was talking to one of the students earlier actually about this. You know, without us as an industry, without journalists, without having people there verifying, they will run riot on social media as they did last summer, and cause riots and extraordinarily terrible consequences to our communities, all because of fake news that's appearing unchecked and unverified on social media platforms. And it's crucial that as an industry we can continue to right the wrongs, and because without us fake news will prevail, and as you can see here, 54% have been tricked into believing fake news, content they discovered to be false. 45% encounter it daily, on a daily basis on social media platforms, and only 25% feel confident in their ability to spot fake news. These are extraordinary statistics, worrying statistics, and again, you know, why journalism has never been more important than it is now. And as I said, without us, more of this could be the consequences. I'm sure you'll remember the riots, how the riots were sparked last summer, as I said earlier, by false information on social media, claiming wrongly that a Muslim migrant was to blame for the devastation that happened in Manchester. And I think, as you recall from that, it actually turned out that that was actually complete untruths. And in part of my role as editorial development director, I've since been working with the police, and we now have a charter that's been drawn up between the local press and the police force to ensure that in future this sort of thing won't be repeated, because they'll be used in trusted local news sources like us when things like this are sparked, to ensure that the facts get out there rapidly. In this instance, what stopped them from doing that was because they were too scared to inflame the situation, so they thought it was better just to stay silent. And staying silent while social media was going off the scale with fake news led to this. And so hopefully now, going forward, with the police and the local news organisations like ours working more collaboratively and saying, you have to release the facts to us, you can't just bury your head in the sand, we should hope that this sort of thing won't happen again. So, the Newsquest strategy. Our strategy is using the power of AI to create time and space for our reporters to focus on original, high-impact journalism to grow loyalty and page views. Okay, so loyalty leads to subscribers, and obviously the page views leads to be able to get more revenue to pay for journalists, which is ultimately the aim and what we want to be able to achieve. This here is a modern newsroom structure. It's actually the Bournemouth Daily Echo down the road here. But this is pretty standard across the organisation now. So at the top of the tree there, you've got James Johnson. He's the editor of the Bournemouth Daily Echo. They all work out of an office in Richmond Hill, the same office they've been in since 1930. And underneath him, there is Ben Paisler, who's the head of news, Sarah Cartledge, Digital Ace, which is the digital audience and content editor, which is basically the digital news editor in old money, who looks after all of the social media platforms and the digital platforms, and basically ensures that everything has got the most engaging elements to it in order for us to get that reach. And then around beneath them are the reporters, so which we're going to talk about in a bit more depth, such as the AI CUAS reporter, which is the assisted AI reporter, copywriting assisted tools, which Deb here is part of that team, and she's going to be talking a little bit more about what that role means in the newsroom. We have Alex Smith, some of you may be familiar with. He works for the Bournemouth Daily Echo as the sports writer, mainly working and reporting on AFC Bournemouth, the trials and tribulations, of course. Hannah Knight, who's here today, chief reporter, former BU graduate as well, I'm pleased to see. We have Simran Meehan, who is a news reporter, Jess Skelton, reporter, Erin Rhodes, a reporter, Richard McLaughlin, a reporter, Deb as the AI expanded reporter, which is the second type of AI reporters in newsrooms, which I'm going to go on to talk about in a sec. And Amy Woodward, who is the BBC Local Democracy reporter. Some of you may have come across at council meetings, and they're funded roles by the BBC that we now have across the UK, 150 of them representing the local news industry and providing a fantastic service. So, over to the AI roles in the newsroom. I'll just grab some water. It's getting very dry a second in here. So, in the modern newsroom, there's now 3 defined roles in reporters. We have newsroom reporters. Those news reporters, their main role is to drive loyalty and page views through quality content and local news. The expectation of their role would be that they're out whenever there's breaking news, out there in person. They may be doing a live blog at the scene of an accident or an incident or a fire, but they'll be there blogging away, but they'll be at the scene because we want our newsroom reporters out all the time. We don't want them tied to the desk, rewriting press releases. We want them out there, get great stories or great ideas for great stories. So our newsroom reporters nowadays are tasked with human interest stories, getting those face-to-face interviews and getting those first-person pieces. We expect them to be in court every day, covering the big stories that have happened, and also the crime journalism as well, which we want them to actually be out where it's happening and talking to police officers and witnesses on the scene. Campaigning and crusading journalism, very important to us. In fact, we're working on a industry-wide campaign at the moment because the government are trying to stop the pubs having to publish public notices when they want to change their licence in newspapers, which would actually mean that the local communities will lose their right to know if a pub is extending its licence to 3 o'clock in the morning or a nightclub wants to open. The government seen that as a way of reducing red tape when in fact it's actually keeping the community out of actually knowing what's going on in their community when it comes to late licences, new pubs and nightclubs, which is a service we feel is crucial. And those are the sorts of things that we can do in our lobbying through our engagement with the local MPs and local councils, etc., across the UK, across all of our titles. So campaigns is very important to us, all shapes and sizes. Secondly, there's the experience-led content, so it may well be that someone might be trying out the new balloon in Bournemouth, for example, when it comes back, which I hope it does, because I've very fond memories of that. But it's those sorts of things. And I spent the day on the balloon, or I spent the day in Bournemouth, and this is what happened. And it's all that kind of thing that actually gives those first-person pieces, and for readers to actually say, oh, well, that actually looks like a really good day out. I'm going to go there and see what that's like. You know, a little bit softer, lighter news there. We also do very strong investigations as well, so we'll be uncovering really interesting articles and probes through doing things like freedom of information requests, and it's the sort of work that a lot of our journalists are now doing because they're now freed up to do so. Patch reporting is again very, very important and crucial to the role of the local journalists now, and in fact all of our reporters now will have different patches of part and topics to report on and make sure that their engagement with the local communities again to get the best possible news stories. And while they're out at the scenes, they're getting some good video coverage, or they might be doing podcasts. And again, as I said earlier, covering local governments and building relationships, which is going to become more and more important as it gets harder and harder to engage with local communities without them wanting to be, text or emailed or what have you. And we want our reporters building relationships in person at the forefront where it matters. So how that mixes with the two roles with AI expansion and the AI CWAS is, first of all, in order to be able to free up our newsroom reporters, we still have a lot of content to fill the newspapers. In fact, there's hundreds of stories written each day for our newspapers by our newsroom reporters that we were thinking, well, how are we going to free our reporters up to be able to do this great journalism and be able to do these great investigations and get these great awards and sell millions of newspapers and get thousands of subscribers if we've got these newspapers to fill? Where is the time going to come from? And fortunately, AI has been our saviour in that, because we now have created two new roles in a newsroom. The first one and AI CWAS, which is the Copyright and Assistance Service. Those AI reporters, instead of press releases, for example, going to the newsroom reporters to rewrite and make sure they get into our newspapers, because we do feel that every story counts and every story matters, that we do want to find a place for it. Those press releases will instead be sent to a reporter like Deb, who will be able to put it through a particular copy creator tool that manages to turn a story around about 20 times quicker than the average reporter, and as a consequence of that, the kind of amount of stories that Debbie is writing for us runs into the hundreds. It's usually around 500, 600 stories a month, and with our newsroom reporters writing around 80. Okay, so you can see there's a big difference there, and it means that those 80 can be spent a lot of time on as well, rather than having to rush back because they've got 10 nibs to fill the paper. Also, material similarly that goes to the AI creators is community content and submitted content, the kind of stuff that comes in from local sports teams, for example, or UGC content, and also for print renosing and rewriting to make sure stuff fits in the paper properly. So content can appear online, but primarily that AI role is purely for helping to filter the newspaper and free up our reporters so they can spend more time out of the office knocking on people's doors. The second AI role is the AI expansion role. Okay, so the AI expansion role has a number of different duties, but it doesn't do print so much and it doesn't focus so much on loyalty. It is there driving page views. It is looking at ways that they can get quick win ideas. It may be might be writing about, say for example, new Flybe flights or jet flights starting at Bournemouth Airport, something that we know is going to get tons of page views. That press release turned around with some background and some colour will fly. But again, it's something that we know that an AI expansion reporter can do very quickly using AI tools to be able to source the material that makes that have a lot more bells and whistles on in a few minutes, and with the result of that we'll get run into the tens of thousands of page views. So there's lots of like quick win ideas. They're doing things like blog summaries. So for example, if we've got a reporter that's out at the scene of a live blog and they're running a live blog online for a fire and they haven't got time to turn it into a story, the AI expansion reporter can pretty much press a button and that all of that live blog will turn into a story within a matter of seconds that's ready to publish. So it's things like really helping to assist them as well in order to get those reaches. We also do things like courts desk roundups. So for example, what's happening in the local courts, we can turn those around as well in minutes. Things like planning applications, again, extremely important and a very well-read service for our readers. So lots of amazing changes there, but as I said, it's all trusted local news that we're using. We don't use AI content that comes from ChatGPT. We're only using content that comes into our newsrooms through trusted source. So, a lot of people say when I'm in these sort of talks is, well, should we turn everyone into AI reporters? We don't want to turn everyone into AI reporters. Okay, we want to have the AI reporters doing their thing to support the traditional reporters that can go out and get brilliant news. But what it does mean, though, is that our non-AI journalists, our traditional multimedia journalists, can use our AI tools that we're developing for a ton of other stuff. So, for example, when I was talking to one of your students earlier, I was kind of saying that actually nowadays it's more important to have a reporter that can come up with 3 great story ideas than it is for them to be a great writer. Okay, because they don't need to be a great writer. They need to be able to go out, they need to build relationships, they need to build trust in the local communities. So they can walk back into the newsroom and say, hey, I've got 3 fantastic stories. I've just been out and I've spoken to them, I've spoken to them, I've spoken to them, what about these? And they may be a trainee, they may be an apprentice, they may be a graduate, but they may not, but they may struggle to write. And so what we can do is actually say, well, put down what you can, put it in bullet points, quotes, whatever you've got, and we can put it all together, and we can actually make it work and rewrite it without them having to even get involved in writing the story, because they're more of a confident news hound than they are actually a writer. And some of our reporters that we've got actually around the industry, some of our major award-winning reporters, particularly on some of our well-read titles in Scotland, for example. They're fantastic reporters, but their writing is terrible. And I think that nowadays that used to be frowned upon, but nowadays the ideas and the exclusivity is more important than the ability to write. I'm not going to read out all these, but you can see from here that there's a whole bunch of stuff that some of the students here will probably know about already. But certainly there's a lot of development that's going on in our industry and our business on how we can use AI to, not just the AI journalists, but also the non-AI journalists to help in their day-to-day roles. So what do we mean by impactful original content that's going to drive page views, loyalty and subs? Well, these are the things that we are now asking our reporters to do in person. Exclusive stories out on patch or from contacts, evocative face-to-face interviews, reported in courts, councils and other institutions, hard-hitting investigations, campaigns and FOIs, live blogs and in-depth breaking news from the scene, first-person content, reviews, columnists, experience-led content, all things that I think you'll agree will make a great read in our titles and keep our engaging with readers for many, many decades to come. Translated into real-life examples here, a few examples on how we can translate that into some fantastic investigations. For example, this one here from the Northern Echo, which is trying to buy illegal vapes. This one actually in Bury Town Centre that was also used in the Northern Echo, and how those big national talking points can lead to our reporters actually going out and actually seeing what's going on with things like illegal vapes in our areas and how easy it is to get hold of them. And again, things like live blogs that can turn into much deeper packages, such as the dreadful murder of last year, which again Hannah here was covered in court, and she'll be talking about a bit later. So I will now be moving on to how we work. We call it the smart newsroom, which is basically how we use data to drive success in our newsrooms, which is a live demo, so hopefully no problems. But I'm just going to stop sharing my slides for a minute so I can actually show you a live demo of how we use data to drive decisions in our newsrooms. Right. Can everybody see that says Newsquest leaderboard on the screen? Sure. Oh, I see. Does that work now? Okay. Let me just see if I can stop share and share again. Right, how about now? Yes, bingo. Never do live demos, but here we go. Okay, so thanks for that short delay. So this is what we use at Newsquest, is the newsroom dashboard. And here, every editor and reporter across Newsquest can see this newsroom dashboard. And what this tells us here is all of the sites across the UK, how many article page views they're getting, this is live, how many new subs that they've got, and how many articles they've published. Okay, this is the last full month. So if you take the Bournemouth Echo, for example, They had 5,908,944, so the best part of 6 million page views last month. They got 213 subs, and they published 1,464 articles. And how this works is we can judge the success, we can benchmark the success of all of our sites across the UK. And at the top here you can see that there's different MDs, different responsibilities. Now I've got overall responsibility for Newsquest's editorial titles, but I've got specific direct responsibility for the South Coast, which are titles like Bournemouth Echo, Dorset Echo, the Brighton Argus, which you can hopefully still see on my screen here. Okay, so on this list here, if I click onto the Bournemouth Echo, there, you can see here, this tells us here the top stories this month. So it will actually tell us which stories have got the best engagement from our readers. So you can see the first one here is interesting enough, something that I was actually referring to earlier about our older readers there. Minimum temperature your heating should be at to avoid mould, which is actually one of our stories written by our central SEO team, which goes across the UK to help Google engagement. Then we get onto the more local content. So you can see here we've got one here from Deb, which is basically about the best before dates of food that Tesco and Asda and Sainsbury's have put out. And then we start getting into some more interesting stories like Richard's driver fined £100 despite parking just 10 minutes, which was a story that was got 45,000 page views so far this month. So a lot of interest in that. Again, motorists to expect more than 2 months of roadworks by Jess Skelton, and that's got 36,000. So you can see from here, so first of all, if I'm James Johnson and I'm the editor and I start looking down this list to see what stories are resonating with readers, I'll actually say, right, okay, so first of all, that story about the motorist expecting roadworks, well, that's obviously done very well for us in page views from Jess this month so far, so we want to make sure that we do some more follow-ups for that over the next few days. Or it might well be that James might be saying to Deb, see if there's some other supermarkets that are removing their best before dates, because that story's really resonated well with Bournemouth readers. Or it might well be somebody about, it might be talking to Simran about the firefighters on battling the blaze on the West Quay Road. Why don't you dig out some pictures on the most recent fires that we've had, and we can use that to go with the story and link it to the other stories to improve circulation. So there's all those sorts of things that this can be worked for in an instant, where you can actually say these are the stories that are absolutely killing it this month. And so let's make sure we can milk the most of them and make sure that we keep our readers engaged. To the right here, you can see the progress that we're making this month, so you can see projected page views. So based on the performance so far of this month, James is hopefully going to get into growth. He clearly had a good month last month because 6.13 million is higher than last month, but to get it higher than it was last year, he's going to have to do some work. So he must have had some cracking stories last year. But here we can also actually review where our content is coming from as well. So we can say this month, so far, we've had 46% of our content that's come through search via Google. We've had 15% from social. We've had typed bookmark, which is direct traffic, so it's people actually typing in Bournemouth Daily Echo, which is 24%, and other websites. So that might be BBC referrals and places like that who have actually run our stories and linked back to us. So we can actually say, well, you know, what can we do to grow our social this month because it's only 15%, and maybe we shouldn't be relying so much on Google because we want, you know, we've got issues with the algorithm, so we want to be really trying not to focus too much on that, and let's try and get our direct traffic up, because if we can improve our direct traffic up, that will lead to subscribers. We can also see from the author group how much of the content has actually been produced by the newsroom. So 80% of our newsroom's content has been published this month. The rest has been made up of AI-assisted reporters, so i.e. Deb, 11% of content, and the SEO team, as I said, writing nice stories about what to do to make sure you don't get mould this month. So, and at the bottom here, you've got the articles that are written there in a more of a graph form. The kind of orange ones are the AI ones, and the blue ones are the non-AI ones. And then on here we've also got the sub-conversions that have come via our content. So we can actually see on here, over the last year, which month did well for subscribers. Okay, so that's really useful to know to make sure that we're on track, because all of the editors are actually targeted to increase page views and subs and ensure that we keep our newspaper sales in single digits. So they will be looking at this constantly all day to make sure they're making progress. So just going back into the general reporters, so if I can look on here, I can scroll through the reporters. So these are all, scroll through the editors. So these editors here, these are all the editors reporting to me. So Aaron at Brighton, Ben at Southampton, Dermot at Dorset, James Bournemouth, Kimberly, who I'm sure some of you know, at Hampshire, Laurie in the Isle of Wight, and Millie, who's the new editor at the Somerset County Press and the Western Mercury newspapers there. And I can see here across the whole of our reporters, the last full month, Rhys Barrett was our best reporter there, getting 1.4 million page views. He's an AI reporter that works for Southampton. And I want to see how they're doing months to date across the board here, and you can see again many of them are still getting, you know, a pretty good, doing pretty good for the average reporters. The average reporters across Newsquest should be getting, on a daily should be getting 550,000, so about 500,000. So anything over that, especially when we're only halfway through the month, is pretty good. So if I want to go into and sit down with James and say to him, so how are your reporters doing this month? You know, you're making good progress. The reporters are also targeted to hit decent page views, and they also get a percentage of their salary as well. So there's good incentive there for them to do so. So at the moment we have Deb there at the top. She's 388,000 page views. That's very good. Well done. And I can actually see there 323 stories this month, which is fantastic. And I can also see Isabella Holiday, 372,000. She's got 6 subs already this month. Hannah, 369,000. So that's the great start. So we can then actually go in and actually review what are those stories that are driving that. And actually also see what progress that she's making. So you can see here on the right here. So Hannah's best story, 30 years of Lush and White, has stayed local to Paul, 9,000 page views. And so if you're an editor here, you can actually go through and actually look at each reporter's stories and actually see from that which are the kind of subjects and topics that our readers are enjoying mostly. And it may be anything from crime, it may be anything from shopping, pubs and bars, it might be sport, it might be court, it might be council. And we can then actually start to drill down and actually saying for the first time as an industry, whereas when we used to publish newspapers, we never knew whether anybody was reading the stories, we never knew why they were buying the paper. We never knew whether it was for the front page, whether it was for the sports page, whether it was the puzzles page. But now we can see live exactly what stories are resonating most with our readers. And through knowing that, through having that live knowledge, we can know what stories they're going to want for the newspaper, and we're going to know what stories they want more and more of. And the stories, most importantly, that they want less of. Because if we know what stories they want less of, and the stories that are only getting very few views, we can make sure that their time is spent wisely engaging in that content that is really going to resonate best with our readers. So this has been absolutely game-changing in our newsrooms. The final thing I wanted to show you on this goes back to subscribers and how we build subscribers through loyalty. Now, a lot of the content that, say, for example, Hannah will get subscription through will be her court content, because she's a court specialist, and a lot of the content that we do for court is because we're the only ones there and we need to be able to fund it. We put a lot of it behind a paywall, which we think is still very good value at the price it is to actually be able to have a court report in court every day, and reporting on, you know, open democracy and everything else. So, and open justice. So those are very important factors of being a journalist. So, but with other types of journalism, what we are trying to do is try and drill down into the topics, the particular kind of topics that readers want to read, in order for us to say, well, if we know that our most loyal readers that come back to our website, and we can consider a loyal reader someone that visits our website probably around 15 times a month, okay? So every other day. Now, if they're coming back, we want to make sure that those loyal readers, because they come back and they visit us all the time, we want to make sure they're provided well for. They've got a good diet of content that we know is going to be rich and really fulfil them with what they expect to get from coming to the Bournemouth Echo, rather than, you know, the ones that kind of fly in and fly out that have come through social or Google that we know are only going to read one story and bounce out again. You know, we want the reports written that they're going to stay for, and hopefully go into a lifelong subscriber with us. So what we have here as well, okay, is a list of topics that we can monitor every month, and this is we've got this for all of our sites that have got subscribers. So how it works with the loyal page views is we have roughly around, out of that 60 million visitors that, if you remember, we started with at the start of my talk, around 1 million of those a month are actually what we would consider loyal. They're the ones that come back across the UK 15 times a month and visits our websites. And we call them loyal because they come 15 times, but also because they read around 40 to 50 pages every time they come each month, okay? So we want to make sure that if they're coming back, they're coming in 15 times a month, and during that 15 times a month, they're reading 50 page views. We want to make sure that they're getting what we want, and we want to keep them, and we want to convert them, because if we get them to, the average conversion starts around 40. We've got a paywall set up, so after 20 stories, you then have to register to read another 20, and then after that you have to pay. So the idea is, if we can get 1 million, the million if you remember I was talking about earlier, that we want to get to with our subscribers, if we can get to 1 million of those through this sort of thing, it will be a lot easier than trying to get them through ones that come in and come out again. So what we do is we say, let's tag all of the stories, and then we'll drill down into the ones that are read by our most loyal readers, the one that comes 15 times a month. And we can see from here that where it's the yellow spike, those yellow spikes is actually the amount of articles published. And the green boxes are actually showing the amount of page views that those stories. So you say, well, some of these topics then get a really good return. So clearly the best topic for loyalty last month for our loyal readers was the celebrities one. That may have been because of the filming that's been going on at the moment, but we published, according to our tagging system, 5 stories on that in the month that were tagged celebrities. That we received from each of our loyal reader around about 18,000 page views in total. So for each loyal page, for the average loyal page view per article, basically 3,400. So if I'm James, the first thing I'd be doing would be going, right, we need to look at those stories that were tagged celebrities for last month, because clearly celebrities are really resonating with our readers. And if we can do more of those, and we can produce enough to make people want to subscribe to us, then we then get more subscribers, and then we don't have to rely on so much social media and Google and what have you to continue to grow our business. And so you can see here that there's a whole array of topics, and it changes from month to month depending on the kind of topics that are being written about, and each one is different. So if we go to different ones around the group, you'll see that they are very different. But you can see here as well that on the next one, business is very, very popular with readers. 41 stories published, 3,400, and out of our loyal page views, it totaled around 139,000, 140,000 page views we got just from those 41 stories. So again, the idea would be the closer you can get the yellow line to the top of where the green line is, the closest basically to say, yeah, we've got that spot on, right? Because otherwise, there's lots of opportunities here, and I will be sitting down with James, as I do in my one-to-ones that I have with him, and I will be saying, those planning and development stories there, look, you wrote 28 of those last month, and they got 3,000 pages from our loyal readers. Now, if we did 40 of those this month instead, that could mean that we could actually get a subscriber out of that, because once they hit that 40, they may want to carry on reading content on our website, but they won't be able to without becoming a subscriber. So we can see at a glance immediately what are the topics that our readers want to read more of. Pubs and bars, again, 7 stories, and I'd be saying to James, you know, obviously sometimes it's quite difficult. You can't turn around and say to him, can you write 100 stories on pubs and bars next month? Because the stories aren't going to be there. But I could say to him, why don't you write 20 instead? That's doable. So from this is very, you know, very new. It's very rolled out, and at the moment, you know, I would say that this could really take care of us to be able to really drill in title by title, story by story, and topic by topic on what stories our readers want that are going to resonate with our readers and help build our sustainable future. Thank you. And now I will be moving on to you, Deb. Welcome, Deb. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, hello everyone, I'm Deb. I'm the AI assisted reporter for the Bournemouth Daily Echo. And as Toby mentioned earlier, there are basically 3 types of reporter roles that we have in Newsquest. So the traditional reporters like Hannah, the CWAS reporter that I am currently the CWAS reporter for Bournemouth Echo, and there is another one, the expansion reporter, that kind of sits in between the traditional reporters and the CWAS reporters. Right. So the main reason why the CWAS role, which was introduced first, was created was because what Newsquest found was that reporters were being chained to their desk. They were churning out copies because filling the papers at the end of the day was one of our main targets. Community content suffered because of this, limiting time for on-ground reporting and high-impact journalism. Therefore, our solution was to create an in-house AI copywriting tool to accelerate routine content creation. Therefore, this resulted in more time and freedom for traditional reporters like Hannah, who could work on front page, top of site storytelling. So if you can hopefully see the picture on your right-hand side. So how does a CWAS reporter works? Basically, we get stories in forms of press releases, posts updates, social media posts, for instance, event details, or website contents like weather report from the Met Office. We take that piece of information, put it into our tool, our in-house tool, and within a few seconds, as you can see on the picture, that there are 2 articles ready. It gives us variation as to which one. It kind of depends on our editorial kind of decisions and to choose. And once we have selected, either, for instance, as you can see, if you guys can see the Liz model that's on the left-hand side. Liz is basically, again, Liz model was developed by one of the AI reporters. So Liz, Elizabeth, she is a real person. So she is the one who had developed this prompt particularly. And from the other side, it's Anderson. So Anderson is, again, another AI-assisted reporter that we had who had created this, this prompt, basically, worked on this prompt. And within a few minutes, you get 2 variations of one article, and then we select one of them, go through it, make sure everything is in order, names, dates, because one thing that we have realized over the time that while AI has progressed, but then there is a lot of things that it gets mixed up. So that's why the human insight or the human in the loop becomes very important over here. And the final story is uploaded into the newspaper website where reporters add images, links, tags, and social media posts before scheduling it for online and print publication. I will play this video. So it basically shows how we take that piece of information, how our tool is using it. Just a second, and then yeah. So as you can see, I'm just copy pasting what we get from a press release, right? We go over to our creator tool, paste it in, advanced search. All these prompts, as you can see, all have been developed by an AI-assisted reporter, and we put in a word count. And what I tend to do is, in the additional section that you guys could see, I put in my set of rules and regulations that I think AI, like it's kind of my kind of safeguard that I have put in place, basically. And as you can see, within seconds, there are 2 variations of one story. And as you guys can see, there is a yellow orangish line that is going through. That is when the fact checker kicks in. That's where it's checking all the facts, making sure that the dates are right, the names are right. And as you can see, both of them have gone green. Now what I'll do is basically go through the original article that is on my left-hand side and the AI-generated article that is on the right-hand side, and go through those keywords and make sure those are correct. And that is like a basic like Control F, and putting in those keywords, making sure those wordings or numbers and dates are all correct. And this is majority where the AI-assisted reporter's role come in, making sure that everything that is been written by the AI is being checked by one of us, that is the human in the loop, basically. So and one of the reasons we go to make sure the quotes are intact, as we like to call it, is because sometimes we have seen, especially when AI was being initially developed, is that it was starting to give its own opinions, which we really don't want it to go through. So yeah. And there it is. And as you can see, there are social posts and article. It also helps us generate article headlines, SEO headlines as well. When I was doing this recording, the AI was having a funny moment. So as you can see, I had to go over and over with the article headlines. And once I have kind of like, finalized one of it, I send it over to our, respective websites, as you can see right there. So this is basically how we as AI or CWAS reporters have been using AI to write articles. But then traditional reporters like Hannah also have the ability to use AI in the sense of we have developed this tool known as Martina. And Martina basically helps reporters with SEO headlines, the article headlines, as well as giving key terms and SEO-friendly words so that it helps get those attractions from social media posts. Yeah. So the frontier sessions. This is, so every Thursday, we all the AI-assisted reporters across the UK, we come together every Thursday for 3 hours and basically work on developing new prompts, basically. And so it kind of works as a creative workshop known as frontier sessions. During these frontier sessions, what reporters do is use ChatGPT. We have licensed ChatGPT with, currently we are using ChatGPT 5 Thinking and 5 Pro to help build prompts. So we write prompts and then we put it into the GPTs. As you can see, like on the side that shared with me, like press releases, police press desk is something that me and my colleagues have developed. So writing in all the prompts, that is what we do. And going through like experimenting with it. For example, like somebody initially when we were rolling out the AI assisted reporter roles, we found that we were getting a lot of press releases with hard quotes in it. So what we decided was to create a GPT out of it. So first we build the GPT, we experiment with it, we do around 500 articles on it, and then we move it over to our in-house tool that we have had. And so that's how the press releases with quotes prompt was built and then moved over to our in-house tool basically. So new prompts are being continuously built over and like every week basically, like from club roundups to cinema listings to court reporting as well. And court reporting so I am part of the court crime and court team who basically builds different prompts to help us with different kind of articles. In the sense, as you can see on the presentation, it's written like missing persons appeal. So generally it would come through the police, like the Dorset police, and then we would take that piece of information, put it into the system, just click missing persons appeal, and within few seconds it will be ready. So it hardly takes, and it gives us a lot of time for traditional reporters, for Hannah, like Hannah actually, to go around, do more in-depth reporting on particular pieces. So it is not just us who is telling that we are using AI successfully. We have like the AI assisted reporters have received the Best Digital Publication Innovation Award at the Associated Online Publishers Digital Publishing Awards in 2025. Newsquest was commended for creating a system that quickly and accurately covers everyday local news. The judging panel highlighted that the team of journalists who refine each draft to maintain editorial standards, local nuances, and accuracy. So why is like the CWAS reporter growing more important? So local reporters do have the responsibility to cover as much news as possible on a daily basis. Without the AI-assisted reporters, traditional reporters would need to produce the same volume actually, because at the end of the day, we do have to fill the papers as we mentioned earlier, but the process would have taken much longer. So local news is not just only about major events, right? So a story about a local football team can be as important, or is actually very important, as to the community as more serious coverage like Hannah does on a daily basis. And so that is one of the main reasons why we started using AI, right? And there is also the better use of time. AI-assisted reporters allow journalists to focus more deeply on complex and high-impact stories. AI-assisted reporters can cover low-impact stories, but locally significant stories much faster, ensuring that every part of the community is being represented. Then we come to the AI expansion reporters. AI expansion reporters are like the new segment that we right now Newsquest is looking into and expanding right now. So as I mentioned earlier, it kind of sits in the middle of a traditional reporter and a CWAS reporter. So it kind of acts as that link between a traditional reporter that focuses on in-depth, human-led journalism, where a CWAS reporter uses AI for rapid content creation. So an expansion reporter on a daily basis will use these AI models or AI tools and use their editorial judgment, content, and nuance in order to draft the article. And again, there is a balance between speed and scale for automation, with the accuracy, tone, and local understanding being the priority. So one of the reasons, again, why expansion reporters are being rolled out in different parts of the UK is because there is a broader community coverage by them, but producing timely, accurate stories that traditional reporters might not have the capacity to do. So there's a continuous collaboration there's a continuous collaboration between traditional reporters, AI-assisted reporters, or the CWAS reporters, as I mentioned, and expansion reporters in order to kind of work together so that every day we make sure the paper is being ready for, you all to read the next day, basically. So yep, that is the AI stuff that we do at Newsquest. So Hannah.
Hi, so yeah, I'm Hannah Knight. I'm the chief reporter at the Bournemouth Echo. So I'll keep this quite short, but basically I'll start with how I got into journalism. So I was actually a student at Bournemouth University, so I studied this exact course. I did multimedia journalism, and I actually started my role with the Bournemouth Echo as work experience. So I just started doing a couple days there. I just went out, I think it was actually the Queen's Jubilee, which feels crazy to think way back now, but that's how I started. I then managed to get my way in as a job at the Bournemouth Echo, so I started as a trainee reporter. Now, with Newsquest, I was able to advance with my NQJ, which ends up being your senior reporter. So it's an extra qualification that you can do. So I progressed then into a senior reporter, and then I took on extra responsibilities within the Bournemouth Echo newsroom. So that involves helping the editors and doing sort of editorial shifts on the weekends and things like that. So I've now progressed my way into a chief reporter, which I'm very proud of. So just go into sort of my life as a daily journalist then. So obviously my role does differ quite a lot to Deb's. So I'm expected to pitch original stories. So it is sort of old school in the way that you would picture it. We do have our daily conferences every day at 9:30, and you are expected to bring original stories in, and your editor wouldn't be too happy if you came in with an empty list. So it is quite sort of stereotypical in that sense. As Toby mentioned, I have taken a bit of a court and crime niche. I just realised it's something that I enjoy, so that's something that I like to cover, and that's when those core journalism skills do come in. I've got my shorthand, I've got my media law, so those things are still really important as journalists. Same with, as a daily newspaper, we do have the managing deadlines. We do have a newspaper to fill every single day. Same with the word count. I mean, sometimes you can get a bit overtaken with the stories that you're doing, but you've got a print paper. There is only so many words that you can print, so you've got all of that in there. We build contacts and trust with the people that we're talking to, and on top of that daily news that we're trying to put out, there is an aim to try and do that investigative journalism, which I think we are getting better at, and trying to balance that the daily news we're trying to do, plus that sort of more hard-hitting investigative journalism that we're trying to branch into. And as Toby mentioned, of course, breaking news and live updates is something we have to do every single day. So I just wanted to take a notice to some of the front pages that we do. So a major case that I did was the Nason Sardi case. So that was a stabbing that we had on Bournemouth Beach, which unfortunately a woman lost her life and another one was seriously injured in that. Now that was a case that went all the way to Winchester, and you see that a lot of our big court cases in Bournemouth do end up going to Winchester. Now, you can imagine, as a daily newspaper, that's quite a hit to lose one of your reporters to go and cover a major court case in Winchester. But it's something that Newsquest were really passionate about. So for 2 weeks straight, I was going to Winchester every single day. And, that really resonated with our readers. This case was something that was really important to our readers, and we saw that in the amount of, readership and subscribers we were getting from that. Now, on top of that, we do the human interest stories. So this is one where you'll see Froz on here. He is a man who's seeking refuge in Bournemouth. And it was funny because he just reached out to the news desk, and I offered to meet up with a coffee for him. And it wasn't until I started chatting, and he said, just to start my story, I'm the former health minister of Afghanistan. And I was like, what a thing to drop into conversation. And then we got into speaking to Froz, and obviously that ended up being a front page. And we actually had a number of national media reach out to us who wanted to speak to Froz, but it's something that he didn't want to go any further. So again, something we're quite proud of. We can say that's exclusive that the Bournemouth Echo managed to get. Same with investigations. Something else I'm quite proud of is something that we uncovered at the Bournemouth Echo was a loophole in the police. So through covering court cases every single day, if a defendant is jailed for more than a year, you can ask for their custody picture. Because as a journalist, you're not allowed to take photos in the courtroom. So how else is the public going to see that person's face if you don't get their mugshot from police? Now, I was finding that I was asking police for these mugshots, and they were saying, well, we don't have them. And to me, I thought that was crazy. I was like, how do you not have a mugshot of someone who is in your prison right now? And it actually turns out that if these criminals were being invited in for a voluntary police interview rather than the mandatory police interview, police weren't required to take their custody image. And that meant that people were coming through the courts, they were going through a trial, they were being found guilty, that they were then being jailed for quite a long time, and throughout this whole process, we've never taken a photo of them. So when I come into court and I'm covering their court case, I've got the readers saying to me, well, we want to see what this sex offender looks like. And I say, I can't, because I don't have his photo. And talking to local MPs and actually going right up to the policing minister, we've realised that this is a loophole in the police. And now this is something that the policing minister is looking into, and they're actually looking to possibly change the legislation to make sure that police have a requirement to take those custody images for everyone that's coming into interviews, so we're not sort of having this loophole. And some of the other stories that I do, so building trust, so this one on the left there, that is Leonie Kennard. So she lost her life in a car crash. It was, she was in a car with a serving soldier at the time. He was speeding, crashed into a tree. Leonie died at the scene. This went all the way through the courts, and I covered every single court case, and I met Leonie's parents. And it wasn't until it got to the sentencing where the soldier didn't go to jail. He got a community order, and he was only disqualified from driving for a couple of years. Now, Leonie's parents were very upset by this, as you can imagine, and Leonie's parents trusted me after the court case finished to tell me about their experience and how they felt about the justice system. Now, something like that you can only get by building trust with your readership, and that was because I went to the court case every single day, and Leonie's parents recognised me, and we got on from that point on. Something else, I mean, business stories, we've got this recently. JP Morgan have decided to invest $350 million into their Bournemouth campus, which is amazing news. So again, you know, something like that stems from a press release. We got that from a press release to begin with. But then, as a regular reporter, I had the opportunity to go on and interview their CEO, Jamie Dimon. And you see we got a bit of a cheeky photo there of Jamie holding the Bournemouth Echo front page, which had to be done. And then something else as my role as a court reporter is I have to take court snatches. So I think when people see these photos of the criminals walking outside of court, you might think we've got a big fancy photographer. We don't. It's me. It's me with a big camera. So I guess that shows that the modern journalist these days, we don't have a million different job roles anymore. We kind of are expected to be all in one, but you know, it's good fun. So that was a picture which I took, which as you can imagine, the boys were not too happy. I had his parents ringing me saying, how dare you take a photo of them smiling? And I said, well, they shouldn't have been smiling as they walked out of court then, but anyway. And then just that bottom story there was a full page of stories which I had recently, which again, something great to see as a reporter, and it kind of shows the amount of different stories that we've got to do. So every story on that front page on the bottom there, other than the sports story, was actually my story of that day. So you can see at the top there, we had a group of residents who were complaining about a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit because they said that fatal accidents were going to happen. So that was something really important in their community we managed to report on. Again, another court case, and then we had Lush's 30 years, which is obviously a global brand, and why they decided to stay local to Poole. So it just shows the variety of stuff that we're covering. But, you know, a lot of these stories, AI just wouldn't be able to do. So it just shows why you need regular reporters in the newsroom. But at the same time, I wouldn't be able to do half of those stories if I didn't have someone like Deb in the newsroom doing those stories that we need and that are filling the paper. So yeah, so I hope that helps show the different kinds of roles, and I will pass it back over. Thank you.
So I apologise, we have overrun a little bit, but we do have some time to get some questions from our wonderful live audience. So if any of you have any burning questions, feel free to put your hand up, grab me. Yeah, let me come up.
Hi, I'm Lauren, brand manager for Kite Clothing, a local sustainable clothing company. I'm always trying to get sort of stories in the paper and in the press. Is sending out a traditional press release still the best way to get coverage? Is it better to target build up relationship with individual journalists, or is it best to come in via news desk? What's the best way of improving your chances of getting some coverage in?
Okay, I would say that in the modern way that we work, our newsrooms are inundated with press releases every single day. And if you recall when I was doing my talk earlier and saying that what's going to be the most important thing now for journalists and for PRs and other companies to get that press recognition is building relationships. So my advice would be instead of just sending in press releases that are likely to get lost, not read, or be read when it's too late, my advice would be to start building relationships up, take the reporter out for a coffee, tell them what's going on and what you're doing, And I think then you're not only we'll make sure that the reporter takes note of what you're talking about and actually think about running the story. The likelihood is that those stories and that relationship will actually develop into better stories and a better relationship. So you know, rather than sending in every single time and chancing it, I would certainly say building relationships is the key.
We've got another question up at the top here. There you are, sir.
Hi, Toby. Oh, are we on? Yep. Hi, Toby. Paul Kimbig from Bournemouth Town Centre Bit. I'm really interested. I mean, those stats and the way in which you analyse stories is fascinating, and you know the reach is remarkable. How do you square off, or how do you protect not being led by the nose by kind of the lowest common denominator of interesting stories? Because you were going, hold on, these stories are read by this, so therefore if we do more of that, it's great. Where does quality and independence rank up against following the stats in order, because you're a business, I get that. How do you square those two things off? Because for me, there's a real danger in being led down a rabbit hole by a lowest common denominator by just looking at stats. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Okay, so how it works at Newsquest is that instead of having the local newsrooms focusing on content that, like what we call SEO content, for example, stuff that's just going to go viral on search and social, our reporters don't do that. Okay, we have a separate team that works centrally of 10 people, 10 reporters who are called SEO reporters, and they will write the stories about what's in the middle aisle at Lidl this week or whatever, or the kind of stuff I was talking about with your heating, or it might be some new HMRC tax rule or whatever that comes out, and which do phenomenal online. But we give editors the choice. So they are sent an advisory every morning of those stories, and throughout the day. We call them the UK Today team. They're under no obligation to use any. Okay, so if they don't want to, they don't, and we just use the local news. Our reporters are not allowed to write those stories in the local newsrooms. The only stories they're allowed to write are local stories about local people and the local community. So that way we avoid completely falling into the realms of the kind of clickbait kind of era of some parts of the industry. In that, even the SEO stories that we do, we will ensure that they're not things like TV legend that turns out to be some guy who was an extra in EastEnders once. We make sure that they've got to be, they're not allowed to mislead our readers, and they've got to be factually accurate, and the headlines have got to be factually accurate. We don't allow clickbait, and it's up to the editors what stories they use that can drive that sort of traffic. So, for example, on our weekly titles, where obviously we've got less staff, and so therefore less stories, if we will ensure that there might not be, many of those kind of central SEO stories written on those sites, and unless the first sort of 6 to 10 stories on those sites are definitely local, and then we'll say, yeah, okay, you can put a story in about Lidl there or whatever, but it's up to them. It's the editor's choice. We don't put any pressure on them. They can use all of it or none of it, but if they use too much of it, then we will pick up the phone and say, look, you haven't got enough local news on your websites. But it is the local news comes first every time.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. We have a question down here. It's going to be for our journalists and student journalists.
Hi there. For our students, please, listening to the presentations today and taking that into consideration, is the future of journalism, as we now see it with the implementation of AI, is that what you expected when you started your studies? And where do you see your careers going in light of the developments?
Definitely, AI is something that we can't ignore at this point. And I remember when I interviewed for this role, I was expected to know how to write prompts, how to, verify the facts that the AI is producing. So as student, I guess the one benefit that we have is that we kind of know how to work with AI, particularly ChatGPT, because I personally, whenever there is a problem, I can't find enough solutions. I'll just go to ChatGPT and ask, give me, for instance, what the best example being, give me the cheapest flights, a list of flights. I can go back home and meet my parents, and ChatGPT will list it out for me. So I know how to use those words so that AI understand what I want. So I think so that is a benefit that we have as students, and yes, definitely it is expected that you know the basics of how to write a prompt, how to structure the prompt in a way that AI does understand. So it is definitely a plus that you should know what AI is all about, definitely. But then again, as I mentioned, that you do have to have the human in the loop, or else AI, because all our content is non-generative, everything is being given to AI by us. It does not go and search the web particularly for a certain thing. So yeah.
I don't think I had kind of factored in AI journalism when I started my degree 2 years ago, because AI, it's kind of, when I think back at when it was first a thing that I was thinking about, it's grown so rapidly. And it's funny, we were actually having a discussion about AI quite a lot today, because I was sort of humming and hawing with using AI for little things like coming up with color schemes for when I'm trying to brand something, because I was having a bit of a moment with which colors contrast well with each other. And actually for things like that, I find it quite useful for cutting out time, whereas I would have spent hours and hours looking at colors. But I'm still a little bit wary of it, I think, because I'm so passionate about the human element of journalism, and I'm so passionate about, I got into journalism because I love speaking to people and I love hearing people's stories.
AI will never replace that.
Yeah.
That will never happen. You will always need journalists to do that. But in those kind of research examples that you use, that's the tool, is that you can use it, because that saves you time. And that's what we want it to be able to do, save time for journalists so they can spend more time doing those stories that you want to do.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. It's something that I'm sort of slowly trying to get my head around, because it's come so quickly. And
yeah, I think I learned a lot as well from Toby's talk and from Deb today, because I didn't really know either how much AI has come into journalism. It does scare me, admittedly, how much AI is invading sort of the industries where there's a lot of creative thought, a lot of creative process that goes on. But it's reassuring to learn that the human stories are still at the center of it. So it's something that I think we're going to have to learn to live with as journalists, which I think we will get used to over time.
And I think we're going to leave it there for this evening. Hopefully these guys might be able to hang around for for any further questions from the floor. And I'm sorry if anyone at home hasn't been able to ask their question. Please feel free to email us and we'll pass it through to the team. Thank you, Toby, for queuing me up and saying with your lovely answer about relationships. Obviously a huge thing that we offer for our clients is managing those relationships with the media on their behalf to ensure they do have the best connection to the best reporter in the room. Thank you so much, all of you, for your insights. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I hope you found it insightful, informative, and has given you a really good insight into the newsroom today and in the future. Thank you so much for all of you dialing in at home. Thank you, and good night.